action. This is the 12th Man Postgame Show, powered by Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local steel dealer today. On your home for the 12th Man and the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
44. Gonzalez's kick is just inside the left upright. Wow. The Seahawks, the year of living dangerously. They do it again. 3rd and 11. Are they coming? They back off. 4-man rush, but Wilson's going to get taken down anyway. That is Byron Murphy, and we're talking about the big plays he's made in the secondary in recent weeks. This time, he comes in on a blitz and gets him. And so Wilson, who was not sacked all night long, gets sacked twice on this drive. Hands the ball off. Chase Edmonds to the 50 and beyond. To the 33-yard line. Chase Edmonds. So here we go again. 41 yards to win the game. And that kick is no good. Play clock is at 1. Gets it off. Throw it out the foot. Metcalf finally makes a catch. Stays in bounds. Metcalf down the sideline. He's going to go all the way, but a flag is down. A flag is down at the 42-yard line.
Holding. Offense to 83. 10-yard penalty for the spot of the foul. 3rd down.
David Moore is the man. Pass is intercepted by Isaiah Simmons, and Arizona's going to get the ball back with a chance to set up for another field goal with 57 seconds. Isaiah City make this one. It is good.
Well, I'd be lying if I said the Seahawks weren't long overdue to actually lose one of these games, because as Al Michaels accurately said there a moment ago, they have been living dangerously game after game after game after game, and finally they got burned on this one, and the Seahawks lose tonight in overtime by a field goal to the Arizona Cardinals. Dick Fain, Slickhawk is with us. Hugh Breedlove Millen's going to join us momentarily. It is the 12th Man post-game show. Oh, man, Slickhawk, the ramifications of this one, I mean, it really depends on how you look at it, and we'll talk big picture a lot, I'm sure, down the road in this post-game show. But just you can say, hey, you're 5-1, you're still in great shape, you're still in first place, or you can go glass half empty, and I think glass half empty is just as accurate as glass half full, and glass half empty is you just let the entire NFC West back in your front door.
Well, it's certainly a different tone tonight with the post-game show than ones that we've done before this season, Dick. And it's interesting because, I mean, this is the most punitive loss to this date that you could have had. You know, you had a real close game that we had against the Patriots, even the game against the Vikings. Sure, it's an NFC opponent, but dropping one to a division opponent, now you're taking into account tiebreakers down the road and things like that. And so, and plus letting the Cardinals, catch up on you. And I don't know that we're necessarily worrying about them being the division winners, but who knows this year? And they've, obviously a pretty good team. So, this one stings for sure. And more than it would have if it was one of the other games before this one.
Great point. It is the worst game you can possibly lose on the schedule. Those 6 division games are by far the worst you can lose. And, it's amazing how this game played out because, first and foremost, you talk about the offensive line. They allowed no sacks in 60 minutes of this football game, and then 2 at the most crucial time of the game in overtime. Just unbelievable. Russell Wilson in the first half was magical. Tyler Lockett was magical. And then in the second half, I mean, I just felt a little – Russell felt loose to me. And it scared me a little bit in the second half. He was throwing balls that I was sitting there going, and they didn't get picked. And then they ended up getting picked after. And it just seemed like the whole game, it was like he was just living on this fancy free edge that, hey, got him multiple touchdowns and 250 yards in the first half, but burned him in the second half.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. And I think and then if you want to talk about overtime, I mean, the fact that they didn't give up a sack the entire all of regulation. And then the Cardinals found something that worked there with that, zero safety look where they're either going to blitz everybody or make it sure look like they're going to blitz everybody and then back guys off. And I just, remember Sam Darnold last year got all the criticism for saying, I see ghosts. I mean, on that last interception, I think it's exactly what that was. I mean, they came down again, they brought that look like they were going to blitz and then they backed off and he got rid of it quicker than he needed to. And instead of blitzing, they dropped back and picked them off. So yeah, there was a little bit of that. The interception down on the goal line, the throw to Carson, just not, I don't know. He just didn't see Buddha, or if he just didn't feel like, I mean, they run plays like that all the time though. And he floats it up there and there's no problem. So I don't know. They're just, he wasn't seeing it necessarily all night tonight.
The two drives that really bothered me was the drive when they're up and clearly playing seemingly not to lose. I mean, they went from let Russ cook, pedal the metal, to let's just entirely pull it back and just play clock management, not to lose conservative football. And that burned them by going too conservative. And then, to be honest with you, Slick, on the last offensive drive there, I felt like they went the other way. And it was like, wait a second, the clock is your friend. If you play this the right way, the worst possible scenario is a tie. Worst possible. Arizona's got one timeout left. Mm-hmm. You can run the football. You can play the ball into the middle of the field and just slowly but surely, methodically work your way down the field. And it seemed like they were taking too many shots, too many risks, too many deep drops against that. Like you mentioned, those blitzes for the sacks. And it just seemed like, hey, man, and I'm talking about before Arizona missed the field goal.
Yeah.
It just felt like, why were they being so aggressive there when the clock was their friend?
I don't know. I mean, they did they did try to run it a little bit, but it wasn't line it up and run it down the gut. It was, we're going to try the off pitch here, and that didn't work. That went for -6 yards. And so, they were doing some different things with Carlos Hyde. They're in overtime. There was not very much, just hand it to them and run downhill. Now, down in distance probably didn't help with that. You take a really bad false start that backs you up to, I think 3rd and 11 or whatever it was. And so then he takes the sack. But so it didn't, I don't know if the game script at that time really played into being able to run the ball. But yeah, that's it. They weren't really making it a point to try.
I'm looking right here at the play sheet, and I'm kind of talking about post 2-minute warning, 34-34 in overtime. And you've got a 1st and 10 after Russell hits Tyler Lockett for 14 yards to the Arizona 48. You have got 1st and 10 at the Arizona 48 with 1:21 left to go in overtime. Now, he then goes incomplete deep to DK Metcalf and then incomplete to Freddie Swain and then the touchdown that was nullified by the David Moore hold. He threw the ball 4 times in a row there. I guess I didn't even realize this. It was worse than I thought, Slick. 1:21 left in overtime. You're in Arizona territory. You have 81 seconds to either win the game or burn the 81 seconds and ensure a 34-34 tie, and you throw the ball 4 times in a row. You never run it once. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it's different from certainly what they do. Now, their 3 previous runs were no gain, -4, and -6. So maybe they felt like they weren't getting what they wanted to in the run game, or, they weren't worried about the clock. I don't know. They were just in an ultra aggressive mode. I am curious. I don't know. I've never played the game. So there's something to ask you about putting your foot on the gas and letting it off and then charging it back up again, how easy or hard that is. I don't know. I'm sure Hugh could answer that. I'm sure Mike Holmgren tomorrow will be able to answer that in the morning show as well. But, maybe it's not, this isn't basketball, I don't know how easy it is to change gears like that.
The ex-Huskies doing damage tonight. I mean, Byron Murphy added late there with the big sack. Buda Baker, obviously the interception. I think, Buda obviously overshadowed by what I think is probably the greatest athletic feat of the COVID era. I can't think of a better athletic feat in this 2020 bizarre year we've had than DK Metcalf running 22 miles per hour to catch Budda Baker.
Does the middle finger block count? I mean, is that athleticism that lets you block a basketball with your middle finger like that? Or is that just, I mean, an incredible pain threshold?
Just an unbelievable performance there by DK. And that's obviously the, what was trending on Twitter for 2 hours there. It kind of reminds me of the Jermaine Kearse catch, the catch that nobody's going to remember because of what happened right after the Jermaine Kearse catch in the Super Bowl. But
also in that building.
But in the same building, bizarre things happened in that building. But I guess in this Twitter era, because it happened 2 hours before the Seahawks lost the game, everybody's still going to remember it. And probably when you think back, at least non-Seahawk fans are probably going to think back, 2 years ago. Oh, remember that DK Metcalf touchdown saving tackle? I think most people are probably going to go, oh yeah, DK saved the game on that play. That's probably what's going to be remembered by people that aren't Seahawks fans. Oh yeah, DK chased him down and they would have lost the game, and instead they won the game. Well, we know the truth. They didn't win the game. 286-9595 if you want to jump aboard and join us on the 12th Man post-game show. Dick Fain, Slickhawk with you. Hugh Breedlove Millen's going to join us shortly to break down this one. But Slick, we saw everything that is great about the Seahawks in this game. I mean, this is a total it's overused, I understand, but this game was a total microcosm of the Seahawks season. We saw Russell Wilson and the passing game at its absolute best. We saw the running game for a good chunk of that game until very, very late with both Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde with some just punishing tackle carrying runs for extra yardage and for first downs. We saw the offensive line for 60 minutes play fantastic football before they broke down in overtime. We saw everything on that offense that had been clicking most of the year click. And then on the flip side, we saw the defense that, really wore out at the end of the game. And I want to get your take, and I want to get Hugh's take on the defensive performance tonight. Because I totally agree with Chris Collinsworth in the last few minutes of this game. He was like, man, that defense is just dog tired right now. And then I thought for the most part, they did what you're supposed to do against Kyler Murray, and that is keep him in the box, right? Keep that guy in the box. Rush 3, rush 4. You don't rush 5 or 6 because that flushes him out, and then all of a sudden he's running downfield. And he did that a couple times in the first half. And to the point where I'm screaming at my TV, don't blitz, don't blitz, don't blitz. They started rushing 4 just about the rest of the game. And for the most part, I thought hemmed him in until they really wore down in the second half. So give me your evaluation just overall on how you thought this defense played tonight.
Well, it's hard because you have a defense that, we know isn't very good. They give up drives and all that. But to your point, I thought they did a good job with Kyler Murray tonight. Now, at the end, they were a little tired. He got loose a little bit. But I thought they did a good job containing Kyler Murray, and obviously that was concern number one coming into the game.
Yes.
As far as, okay, we're going to look at the thing, and they gave up 37 points tonight, and the Seahawks had a lead, and it's easy to dump on them, and we're going to dump on them, and to some extent they should be dumped on. But you did have a drive that was carried on because of a penalty that was bogus on Bobby Wagner.
Yep.
And then you held the Cardinals to a field goal to where you had a 7-point lead. And then Benson Mayoa makes a stupid boneheaded penalty on his own and to allow that drive to continue. So you had 2 drives that were elongated by things that, now obviously that's their fault. That's his fault. But by things that aren't typical. And so they were making the plays that you had to make enough with what the offense was doing and the cushion that they gave you and everything. So they played well enough that you could win, but then also, they messed it up. That penalty was a perfect example of how they messed it up too. So I thought the defense played all right. They made the plays that we become accustomed to, getting some turnovers as we become accustomed in doing. And that's why, even though they give up all these yards, yes, and they do give up drives, this is a defense that turns the ball over too. And so that bails them out of some stuff and helps the offense out. So, defensively, like a C minus, I get. 37 points, that's a lot, but again, you had one drive aided by a penalty that wasn't their fault, another drive aided by a penalty that was.
Absolutely. I think that's a fair grade. I mean, people on Twitter right now and text are obviously, I mean, they're just absolutely crapping on this defense right now. And I guess, yeah, there's a long way for this defense to go, but and we're going to talk to Hugh. He's going to join us in just a second. I just thought that game plan wise, they did what I wanted them to do, and that's hem Kyler Murray in and make sure he doesn't beat you with his legs. He had 14 carries for 67 yards today. You will take that every single day and twice on Sunday night when you hold Kyler Murray to 4.8 yards per carry. What they didn't do is take care of Chase Edmonds. My goodness, Chase Edmonds touched the ball 12 times tonight. 5 carries, 58 yards, 12 yards a carry with a long of 32, 7 catches, 87 yards. So when Kyler Murray got the ball either on the handoff or the dump off to Chase Edmonds, that's the guy that killed you tonight. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, overtime game, 10 catches, 113 yards. He had a DeAndre Hopkins game, but you don't look at this game and go, wow, DeAndre Hopkins really killed you tonight.
Yeah, I think you're going to live with that, though. I think you're going to live with Chase Edmonds doing even what he did. It wasn't over the course of the whole night. Kenyon Drake was, carrying the ball most of the night, and then he went out with his injury. So, yeah, down the stretch, he was a spark for them, and he had fresh legs, obviously. But I think even then, if you're going to face – all right, we got Pete Carroll that we're going to go to at the podium. So we'll get back to this point later.
We had all kinds of chances to win the football game, and we could have won it on offense a couple of times and on defense a couple of times and in overtime as well. And we weren't able to get the finish that we needed. We've been finding that way on one side of the ball or the other to make the play, make the sequence happen, and we had our shots. We take such pride in finishing well and doing things right down the stretch and executing and making the other team have to out-execute us. It didn't feel like that tonight. It didn't feel like we were able to force that issue in our favor. It's hard to win them all, and we're going to keep trying. And it's tough to lose a division game, but they played their tails off tonight, and you can see why they're a good team and they're hard to deal with. We had some phenomenal things happen tonight in this game. Tyler Lockett's game was just crazy. He just did so many terrific things, so many special plays, and just again, he's just a great football player, and he showed it again. Russell's numbers are huge with throwing and rushing and all of that, and then the 3 picks get you. We're -1 for the game. That's how it goes. -1 is really hard to win, and none of those had to happen. And so. I know he's really disappointed about that for sure. Tough. It's a tough night for us in the desert. We've had a lot of success down here, and we look like we're going to have it again. And we look like we won the game in OT, and we got a penalty on us, and to take that away. So that's how close these games are. They're all over the league, and this is what we're up against. It's going to be like this week in, week out. We're versed. We're versed. We just got to find a way to come through and make the plays like we know how to do. So, okay, go ahead.
John Boyle.
Yeah, Pete, just defensively, you guys look like you made some progress in the previous 2 games. Just how do you feel like that went tonight for you guys?
Well, no, obviously, John, not good enough. They scored 30-something points, 37 points. Not good enough. We didn't get off the field. I don't know any of the numbers on third down or any of that stuff, but it couldn't have been any good. The quarterback was able to make plays, when we did have them, and just like he's been doing. That's why he's special. But it's just we just have to find our way to get our stops and get off the field and give the ball back to our offense. The offense had almost 600 yards tonight. We need to give them the football more times, and they got more. So it's not good enough.
Matt Calkins.
Hey, Coach. Speaking to that, you guys had no sacks today. Had a hard time getting to Kyler. It seems like that's been an issue for a lot of the year. What can you say about the pass rush and how concerning that is for you?
Yeah, we had our hands on him a few times and we weren't able to get him down. And he's been sacked 9 times coming into our game, I think, and that's because he's really hard to get, and we were unable to do it. And huge play opportunities if you get him there, knock him out of bounds or chase him down. He's really special avoiding. I don't know that has. We did a lot of dropping tonight, and as they spread out and try to cover him down, and so we didn't rush a lot of guys at him. And but it always needs to be better. I mean, we need to keep working at it and making sure that we're making ourselves available to disrupt some plays. That's what didn't happen.
Art Teal.
Pete, late in the game,
You got to ask that again, Art. Try again.
Got it. Late in the game, the Arizona's blitz was really getting to Russ, especially in the overtime. Looked like he took a pretty hard hit in OT. Was he affected by that blow, and would that have affected the last interception?
No, he was fortunate that he wasn't, because he did get whacked pretty good. We were trying to take advantage of it, and we didn't do as well as we would like to have as they were coming. We didn't hit. We like to make them pay when they do that, and we weren't able to quite get that done enough. I don't know, Russ threw for a ton of yards tonight and all that, but there was more out there. But they were, we knew they were coming, and we kind of were welcoming it to take advantage and hit the plays, but we weren't able to get it done enough.
Greg Bell.
Pete, you mentioned the interceptions didn't have to happen. Can you describe what did happen or why it didn't have to happen?
Yeah, I think, I can't remember the first one clearly, but Russ threw the ball up and laid one over the top and didn't quite get it done. He had the guy in the corner of the end zone, and he laid the ball up, and Baker made a great play on him. In practice, we've been throwing that ball kind of like that, and I don't know how he saw the play coming and developing as he did, but Russ thought he had him, and then he had the other one, the last one, he laid up over the top, and he tried to drop that one in on him. He didn't have to throw that one, but that's going to happen. I mean, I don't know how many times we threw tonight, but when we just made some errors, and 50, yeah, so stuff like that.
How's Chris Carson and Shaquille Griffin?
Chris has got a mid-foot sprain. We don't know until we get an MRI what that means or what the extent of it is. Who else did you ask about?
Shaquille Griffin concussion.
Yeah, he had a concussion enough to keep him out of the game. He was pretty clear afterward, so we'll just have to go through the protocol and see how he does.
Thank you.
Curtis Crabtree.
Yeah, Pete, what did you see there ultimately defensively late as you were trying to get them stopped? And I think they started to go to the run game a little bit there late with Edmonds and getting you a little bit there. What kind of did you see as you guys were trying to wrap that up there in the closing?
They played a lot of four wides in this game. Late in the game, as we got the guys banged up, it was taxing to us. They ran the ball because of the field position in the clock and the field goals that they were playing for, and so they were able to do that. They did a better job than we should have let them. But they did a nice job. They handled the clock really well, and you saw they got it down to 2 seconds and killed the clock just right for their opportunity to win. So I thought, I just thought they did an impressive job. They kind of ran it by situations. They didn't run the ball real well and throughout the game. But at the end of it, they did, because it was kind of, we're spread out, and they did a nice job of mixing in and using the QB a little bit, draws a little bit, and all that.
Joe Fan.
Pete, curious if something happened to Travis Homer in this one in overtime. That's why he wasn't in there. And
yeah, he got whacked on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Were the blitzes that they showed you in overtime ones that you hadn't seen previously in the game?
First off, Homer has a knee contusion. We don't know what the extent of that is right now. He'll get checked out in the next couple of days. These guys have blitzed a lot over time, and they've thrown everything. This was just a variety of their things that they always do, and they have a big blitz package. And if they get you where you're not able, to take advantage of it, then they keep it coming. That's kind of what happened tonight. We didn't do poorly against it all the time. There was some stuff that we did that was good, but late down the stretch, we needed to win a couple, and we didn't quite get it done.
Brady Henderson.
Pete, the play by DK Metcalf to save the touchdown. What did you think of that?
Yeah, it was one of the best football plays I've ever seen. It was just remarkable. You saw him realize what was happening, the opportunity, and he just used all that marvelous skill that he had and the will to go run the guy down. And it was such an incredible play because of what happened afterwards. The defense followed and rallied, got out of there in 4 downs and took the ball off him. Offense goes 96 yards with a drive.
Carol, after the game there, and we're going to have Hugh Millen join us in just a second. I do want to take a couple of phone calls here. The fans are, as usual. I mean, I've been saying this for years. On the 12-man post-game show. When the Seahawks win, nobody wants to talk. When the Seahawks lose, everybody wants to talk. So I guess that's just the way it is. Let's go to Nate in Seattle. You're first up on the 12-man post-game show. Hi, Nate. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Been better, Nate. Not gonna lie.
But the main question I had actually was answered in the press conference because DJ Dallas looked extremely lost out there when they were blitzing in overtime, and I didn't know where Travis Homer was because I think that he's their best pass pro running back, and so I didn't see Travis Homer, and I was wondering what was going on, but now I know. But no, I mean, the Arizona just made better adjustments at halftime. They came out and their blitzes were too effective for the Seahawks in the second half and mostly in the fourth quarter and overtime. And the Seahawks have to do something defensively. I don't know what it is, but, they get no pass rush at all. And, I think the keys to the game tonight were having Shaquille Griffin get hurt, and then that Bobby Wagner 15-yard penalty that was just bogus. I mean, those two plays were just critical. And finally, Kenyon Drake getting hurt, that might have almost been a bad thing for us because Chase Edmonds just killed us.
Yeah, Chase was even more effective than Kenyon Drake. I appreciate the call, Nate. I will correct you. The offensive line was stalwart all through the all through the third and fourth quarter. It was really only overtime that the blitz finally got to Russell Wilson there. And I'm definitely going to ask Hugh about a couple of things that you mentioned. One, the adjustments that Arizona made in the second half, where Russell Wilson really was stymied in that entire passing game stymied after halftime, after 250 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in the first half for Russell Wilson. So we're definitely going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk to Hugh about the defense and whether by design they just had a contain pass rush tonight versus an over-aggressive, let's try to get sacks pass rush tonight. We're going to talk to Hugh about that as well. Sam in Spokane first before we go to Hugh. Hi, Sam.
How you doing, Dick?
Good, man.
Hey, so a couple of things that I just first want to talk about, and maybe Hugh can shine some light on this too, but, you got Carlos Hyde getting stopped on the 3rd and short, so we have it, I think it was, 4th and 2 with, a minute 20, minute 30 to go. What I don't understand about Pete Carroll's play calling is why would you give the ball back to Kyler Murray in Arizona? I mean, I know we're capable of getting 4th down conversions. Why not give your MVP the chance to lock the game up? And secondly, it's the defense is getting no pass rush, and Kyler Murray's just picking apart our secondary. So, we allow ourselves to, continually keep these guys in the game when we should have locked the game up right from the get-go in the fourth quarter. So, I just don't understand why you would take the ball out of your MVP's hands. And, when you're given a gift like Gonzalez missing that 41-yard field goal attempt, which I hope Softy plays on a loop tomorrow during the show, because I know that's his favorite thing ever to play.
We would have played it more if we'd have won.
Yeah, that would have helped a lot, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. But, I mean, in that instance, David Moore can't hold on to, I think it was Kirkpatrick on that play. He cannot hold on that because DK scores, game over. But, in that situation, you just have to have the wherewithal to be like, you know what? He can score. I don't have to hold my block.
Well, he doesn't score. I watched it again. There is no way DK Metcalf scores. In fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, Slickhawk, and I appreciate the call. Sam. I don't even think he gets a first down.
Well, it definitely sprung him. Now, we've seen DK throw off, flailing defensive backs before. So I certainly don't think he scores. Maybe he gets him, maybe he's able to get closer to the line to gain, and maybe you go for it on 4th down there. In fact, I bet they would have. They were talking about that, I think, right before that on, go for it if it's closer. But so I think that certainly you're closer. But no, he wouldn't have scored. That hold sprung him.
Absolutely. Without question there. And let's bring in Hugh Breedlove Millen joining us here on 950 KJR 12th Man postgame show. And Hugh, I got a lot of specifics for you, but let's start out with just some general thoughts on just another wild and woolly Sunday night football game involving the Seattle Seahawks. Every single one of them's like this.
Well, my impression is that you get 6:44 to go in the fourth quarter, and you hit the touchdown, the reviewed play by Lockett, that puts you up 34-24. And Seattle has been such a clutch team. And from that point, with less than half of fourth quarter to go, Seattle surrenders a 10-point lead. And really they had breakdowns in all three phases. All three, you had the subsequent drive there by the Cardinals. You know, you'd forced that field goal, and Benson Mayowa, jumps off sides and apparently doesn't know the rules. He's given a 15-yard penalty. And so instead of defending a 7-point lead, now it's just a 3-point lead. So that was because 2 plays later, the Cardinals were in the end zone. Seattle gave scant resistance at that point. Then Seattle with 2:28 to go in regulation, the 4-minute drive, they got really conservative. I understand the circumstances, but they kicked the ball. You've got the best punter in the world. He's got a chance to pin him inside, but he boots it in the end zone. So now it's still 52 seconds. But again, the Cardinals only need a field goal. 52 seconds remaining in regulation. And the first play, there's 11-yard completion right off the bat to Larry Fitzgerald. Ryan Neal is playing 7 yards off, and the cardinal sin you want to have in man-to-man coverage, don't let a slot receiver run a slant. You got to take away the slant. So that's bad football. They spike the ball, they come back, and they go quarterback draw. So they show the Cardinals a defense called two-mans with 2 safeties high, 5 under man. There's nobody accounting for the quarterback. They had a scheme where they had Shaquille Griffin spine. So to me, if you're going to play two-man, you got to have a 3-man rush, and you got to have Shaquille Griffin over the ball on Kyler Murray. But they just run the quarterback draw. He gets 15 yards, and they get up and spike it again. And then the play that really got me, 2nd and 10, on the 46, Seattle plays a 2-deep, 5 under zone, and they drop off the 8th defender, and you've got to have Trey Flowers defending the out right there. There's only 24 seconds to go in the game. You can't let them throw to the sideline flat. They call a coverage that allows for Flowers to be in the flat. And he ends up, Murray throws it out to the flat, the check down, as if Seattle's in some terrible scheme that would allow the ball to get the flat with no timeouts in 24 seconds. No, they were in a cover 2. They were in a zone, and Flowers, shows up late on the scenes, and it's a 16-yard gain. So, from that point, they were able to go in and get the field goal. So it was just a breakdown, and that's just, we haven't even got to the overtime, but I'll take a pause there. I just think that the last handful of minutes in regulation was frustrating, and of course, Seattle had some opportunities. I assume you're going to ask me about Seattle's possession where they had the ball just over midfield at the Arizona 48 with 2.5 minutes. Who didn't think Seattle was going to win at that point? After they got 1st and 10 at the 48. And all they need is a field goal at this point because they've already had the transition of possessions, right? And so, and then the pass protection they acted like they had a rookie quarterback. They acted like they had a rookie offensive play caller. Look, it's hard to really bang on these guys. They're a one-loss football team. But right now in the moment, you look and you say, Seattle got out-coached there at the end. They made stupid mistakes. Russell was un-Russell-like. Bobby Wagner was un-Bobby Wagner. Like, I don't think that was a penalty, but nonetheless, he still had the penalty. That was incredibly decisive, and so they didn't play their best football.
Well, you're reading my mind on where I was going with you next because Slickhawk and I brought it up before you came on. 1st and 10, Hugh, at the Arizona 48-yard line. There is just 1 minute and 21 seconds left You have 1st and 10. In that situation, the absolute worst case scenario should be you go home with a tie. 1st and 10 with 1:21 left, and I don't understand the play calling there. Incomplete deep left to DK Metcalf. Incomplete short right to Freddie Swain. The pass to Metcalf where you had the holding penalty. It went for a touchdown, but you have the holding penalty. I don't understand why the run game wasn't involved there, because you have got the time is on your side and it's against the Arizona Cardinals. You want to make sure, yes, you want to advance the ball another 15 yards to feel comfortable about hitting a field goal, but you want to do it taking up at least a minute of that 1:20. So at the very, very worst, if you don't get the first down, you're punting back to them, pinning them down inside the 10 with 15 seconds left. I don't understand what they were doing there, Hugh.
Well, on that possession, they started on their own 31 with 2:42 remaining in overtime. They got the out route for 11 yards to Lockett. Then they threw a swing route. That was another thing about Russ. I mean, he throws a swing route for -4 yards with the linebacker right there. Like that was just, and he had Lockett on a shallow cross coming from his left. I think Russell was just off his game, but they had another nice check down, a beautiful run after the catch. I'm looking at all the plays that preceded it, and in terms of how the run. Now the 1st and 10 at the 48. They throw the out. It was an out route, not a deep route. It was a comeback to DK Metcalf, and in that one, DG Dallas just did a poor job of pass protection. So Russell was under siege. They kept the tight end to block. So Russell had a 3-man concept off to his left side. They essentially shrunk the field, but it's man to man, and they just didn't win. And I would say a common theme for Seattle there is there was a lot of press coverage by the Cardinals, and a lot of times. If you have double press, meaning 2 guys in the slot, you want to and they're both pressing on those guys in the slot, you want to run the pick and rubs. You got to force the defense to play at different levels, meaning if one corner is going to jam at the line of scrimmage, the other one's got to be off 4 or 5 or 6 yards so they don't get picked. So I think the first down, it was a comeback out there. Again, poor pass protection by a rookie. But the second one,
for just a second there, Hugh. Can I cut you off just a second on that first down play? There's where you run the ball. You run the ball on 1st and 10. You know why? Because Arizona is going to sit there and Arizona's going to go, wait a second. Should we take a timeout here? No, we can't take a timeout here because we want the clock to run. Then you let 25 seconds run off the clock. And let's say you only get 2 yards on first down. You have 2nd and 8 at the 46-yard line, but now Arizona does not have time, no matter what you do. They do not have time to have the ball again and go the other way to kick a game-winning field goal. You put a tie as the worst-case scenario if you run the ball on first down on that play.
It's okay. You've voiced your opinion. You were asking my opinion. My opinion is, look, it's real easy here on a post-game show to talk about the first down, the pass play that didn't work. Okay, they had passed up to that point, and just look at the box. Arizona, we talked about this on Thursday. They show they are aggressive. Just from a mentality standpoint. Slickhawk, you were listening to me on Thursday, were you not? I said, look, you study the Arizona Cardinals, and one of the first things you look at, you say, what's psychology? What's their philosophy about defense? Are they a drop back and keep everything in front of you? I said, no, these guys are a combination of their fronts, their coverages, everything. That first down, it was a heavy box. And if you got the MVP of the league and you got man-to-man coverage based on how they were stacking the run, I'm not going to sit here and say, because guess what? If they had ran it on 1st and 10 and got stuffed for no gains, I'd be saying, look, they were giving you an opportunity with man-to-man. You got these great receivers. Everybody's talking about their great receivers. You're talking about the MVP of the league. Why are they running in a heavy box and creating 2nd and 10? So, look, they didn't get the execution on the first down. But you go ahead, knock yourself out. If you want to second guess that they should have ran the ball, I'm going to tell you, number one, unequivocally, that it was a heavy box and it was a pass front. Now you could say, well, still run into a heavy box anyways. Okay, to me that sounds like Sunday night quarterbacking. All right, I would say for me the second down play, when a team goes cover zero, you go four wides and you have a running back in the backfield. It's simple math. They're playing without a free safety in the middle, and teams seldom do that. That's like less than 2% or 1% of all downs in the NFL. Do you pull the safety out of the middle? That means you're getting the threat of a 7-man rush. You've only got 5 linemen and a running back, so you got 6 to block 7. That's what cover zero is. Seattle did a poor job of handing. It was just a double slant. That terminology is called lion, double lion. All right, doubles. So it's a simple concept. Russ, he's got 2 inside guys. He knows his cover zero. The guys on the inside are 9-10 yards off the ball. He just got to grab it and throw it to Lockett, or grab it and throw it to Olsen. And as far as a pass protection scheme, simple rule in cover zero. They're rushing 7, you rushing 6. Turn the outside guy loose, not the inside guy. So you had, and it was either Dallas at that point or Carlos Hyde. One of them on that second down there. I just don't have the running back. He's out there blocking the edge. He needs to block the A gap and the B gap. All right, so that's poor execution from the running back standpoint. And Russell, he ends up throwing out there to the Z, the number 1 receiver outside. Pre-snap alignment, that corner was way inside. Like, you're going, Russell, you got 4 slants. Pick the matchup. One of the 2 inside slants are the shorter throw. You catch it and go, just like a second baseman. And so I think he made a poor decision of where he's going the ball, and they did a poor job of how they chose to block. You block from the inside out. If you're going to turn a guy loose, the math is simple. You're going to turn a guy loose. You got to turn the guy on the outside. So then the third down was, to me, the touchdown. To me, that was just a flat out indicator. I'm just saying, if I was in an NFL quarterback meeting room playing with the 3 Hall of Famers that I played with, and we're studying an opponent, and I would just look and say, Seattle just gave up. They raised the white flag. They just said, we can't protect. We're going 3rd and 10, and we've got the MVP of the league, and we're just going to throw a smoke screen out there to DK Metcalf because we cannot protect. So you can talk about how that turned into a touchdown and David Moore should have blocked. And yeah, he should, he just went out there and grabbed him. It was clearly grabbing. It was a material violation. I mean, if you're a Seahawks fan that thinks that wasn't a material block for the touchdown, I mean, you just got to really look at that play. But
he sprung him with that hold.
But you saw, was it Lockett gave a great block and chopped his guy? Somehow or another, David Moore's got to compete better. He's got to, I get coach high school and youth football. I say, look, if I offered you $1 billion to jump over the goalpost, you can't do it because 26-year-old Michael Jordan couldn't jump over a goalpost. But if I offered you $1 billion to block your guy for 4 seconds, I bet you could do it. It's how bad do you want it? And at that moment, there was an opportunity to win the game, and David Moore, he wasn't given the effort you need to have. And then that creates the 3rd and 14. Russ just thinks he's going to hit Freddie Swain on a seam route and catch him looking, but the way they dropped out, that was going to be dubious. But he's thinking, hey, there's a concept for a quarterback. I'm talking about the interception now, the 3rd and 14 interception. There's a concept for the quarterback where you say, hey, uncovered, they blitzed off that side, replace the blitzer, and Freddie Swain is saying, hey, we're running all go special, which means I'm number 2 and I'm going to run my seam. And that all go special just means all go out of trips. Normal all go is a 2x2 concept. Yeah, you got when you had Lockett, and that, by the way, on that play they had Lockett as the 3rd guy counting outside in from the right. You have Greg Olsen as the tie on the left. You would always have Olsen on an outbreaking route, a corner route, or a sail or an out route. They have Greg Olsen running a skinny post. So if by chance they had the matchup that they wanted with Lockett on the in-breaking route as the number 3 receiver counting outside in, you would normally want Olsen to be running out so that they're going in this direction. But they had Olsen running right into Lockett. So it's just,
So you're taking the defender right into him?
The route by Olsen was, this is again the 3rd and 14, the last of 3 interceptions. But Freddie Swain was the number 2 on the seam route, and Russ just thought he could hit him and just catch him in that seam. I kind of understand why he did it, but the play was a mess because even your primary guy was Lockett on the deep over route, and he was going to be running right into a one of the smartest guys the NFL's had in the last 20 years, in Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen's a heady dude. What the hell? And I'm not saying that that there was a bust there. I'm just saying you can't have that happen. And so, Seattle just wasn't clutch. I just, you look at these plays and you say, are you beating yourself? Where are you mentally? Are you playing like a sound football team so that you're at least let the Cardinals beat you?
Yeah.
Don't do dumb stuff. Don't call cover 2, which is designed to take the flat away in a kill the clock situation, and then let them throw a 16-yard completion to the flat. Like, that's bad football. And look, I know that I'm sounding like a team. They're 5-1. We got to stop and say they're 5-1.
Fair criticism, because Hugh, in the 12-man postgame shows in the past, when they win games, what do? We spend 10% of the time criticizing them, 90% of the time lauding them about how they were gutty and they gutted out that win. Well, they have had these issues in all these games, and now it came back to bite them. So I think it is fine at this point, because you're not talking about big picture Seahawks. You're not talking about, oh, they're terrible, they're not going to win the division, blah, blah, blah. You're talking about the mistakes they made individually in this overtime. And I want to ask you, we're going to take a quick break, because I want to ask when we come back, the people just killing the defense right now. I mean, Twitter is blowing up. Our text line's blowing up. I mean, it's just, and I want to know from you, how bad was it really? Or was the scheme executed well for a while, hemming Kyler Murray in, and they just got flat out dog-tired and missed some assignments late in the game? We'll ask you that. It's the 12-man postgame show brought to you by your Steel dealerships. Steel dealerships, independently owned and operated with over 10,000 dealers nationwide. There is one near you, so support a small business in your community. Visit your local Steel dealer today. Real Steel. Find yours. Dick Fain, Slick Hawk, Hugh Breedlove Millen, 12-man postgame show continues right after this on 950 KJR.
KJ and KJR FM HD2. Seattle! Available everywhere with the iHeartRadio app. Now number 1 in podcasting. Sports Radio 950 KJR, an iHeart radio station.
All right, this is 6 with Slick. That's what we call it, because the break's about 6 minutes long, and you get it with me. While Dick and Hugh, if you weren't here for the last postgame show, while they're gathering their thoughts or getting water or whatever it is that Dick Fain does in between the breaks, you get me instead. So it's a tough loss here, 37-34 in overtime. A lot of, Puckett and I from 10-1. We do the whole blame pie versus shots thing. There's going to be a lot of blame pie to go around, I think, tomorrow, as you've already heard. Now, the comments you guys are all sending in, keep them coming in. A lot of good questions there. We should be able to get to some from Hugh, get some answers from Hugh and from Dick as well. But, you dropped to 5-1. Obviously, it's disappointing, especially the way it happened, because you felt like the game was in hand a couple of times. When you go up 10 points, and so you have under 8 minutes to go, up 10 points, feel like the game's in hand at that point, at that juncture. When you held them to a field goal right before you found out about the Benson Mayowa penalty flag, now it's a 7-point lead. Still, you still felt pretty good about that. I did. Felt like the game was even in hand at that point. And then the missed field goal. I don't know. It may be probably because we've seen it time and time and time again from Russell Wilson in this offense, and how clutch. Hugh mentioned that they weren't clutch down the stretch, and we've seen clutch after clutch after clutch from Russell Wilson and these guys. So you just figure Zane Gonzalez misses the 41-yard field goal. We got in the bag. Now Russ is going to march down, get the touchdown. That's not what happened. And just kind of the way that fourth quarter and overtime went, obviously really frustrating, because there was just – I felt like there was too much of the Seahawks shooting themselves in the foot tonight. And the number one example, and this is going to be something I talk a lot about tonight, talk about a lot about tomorrow, the Benson Mayowa penalty. And I keep bringing it up because it was so huge. The fact that not just the offsides, because they were just going to take the points anyway, and so you're still going to be up 7. But the fact that Benson Mayoa climbs up on the guy, which, I mean, this has been a rule for a while now, and I just think that anybody who's on a kick team knows, even if you're late, you can't jump on the guy. So that allows them to march down and score. Then it's a 3-point game. There was another situation. You take a false start at a critical point there in the game. And so I think that was on Brandon Shell, but regardless, just a lot of shooting themselves in the foot. So a lot of blame to go around. Some of it goes to coaching. Some of it's the players on the field. I know a lot of people are calling out 2 things: play calling, and then Ken Norton. And like we've talked about in the past too, I don't know how much of the defensive woes you can put on Ken Norton versus how much you're putting on Pete Carroll. It's Pete Carroll's defense. It's kind of always been his defense and his scheme. And so Ken Norton, I know he gets a lot of credit when things are going well, and he gets a lot of hate when things aren't going well, and that's just kind of the life of the coordinator. But when this system with Pete Carroll, he runs that thing, man. And so that's the one, I mean, you're really looking at, and I think it's not even necessarily a scheme issue nearly as much as it is a personnel issue. And we've talked about the pass rush woes for this team time and time again in the offseason, during the season, last season. Even when you had a guy like Clowney who was able to get pass rush, he didn't get home a lot, but he was able to do it again, and especially shows up fourth quarter and overtime. Kyler Murray, he's running a game-winning drive or a game-tying drive. You're not able to stop him. You're not able to put any kind of pressure on him, and he's able to kind of do what he wants. So that was obviously the biggest issue defensively down the stretch, and then just letting some of their guys run free too. So a lot of problems tonight, and these are the kind of problems, I mean, these aren't new. Maybe Russell Wilson not coming up clutch in the end, that part is new. The rest of it, not so new. The fact that at times can't protect, at times shoot yourself in the foot, and then almost all the time can't generate a pass rush. These aren't new issues. It's just they've been glossed over by the fact that, hey, you're winning these games. They've been 5-0 coming in, winning games a lot like this one and capitalizing off of the other team's mistakes. Some of them you forced, some of them not. A lot of people on the outside, non-Seahawks fans, I want to call it luck. I call it just being the better team. And down the stretch, the Seahawks, for once, weren't the better team tonight. And they put up the numbers on TV last year, 10-2 in one-score games, I think tying an NFL record or whatever it was. That's all clutch factor, right? But I just think that when you live and die by that, when you're relying on, okay, we have to win it at the end every single time, you leave yourself open to, I mean, the other team wants to win too. So you open yourself up to the possibility that they're going to be able to make more plays than you, or one thing is going to go wrong, and that one thing is going to be the big thing that's going to cost you the game. When you continue to live games on the edge, look, we all love it when it works out, and 80-90% of the time it does work out. Last year, 10-2 in those kind of games, right? So that's what we're used to. But when it doesn't work out, this is the result, and we were all upset, and there's a lot of criticism to go around. So it's really easy to forget about those times. All right, Dick Fane's back, Hugh Millen's back. We're coming back here on the post-game show presented by Steel.
Now back to the 12th Man post-game show, powered by Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local Steel dealer today on your home for the 12th Man and the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most remarkable plays I've ever seen. You know, just the play, the effort by DK. And I kind of blocked by the lineman there, and I was trying to get away, and I tried to make the effort, but DK had the angle. He just kept going, man. It was just unbelievable play by him. I mean, just the effort. I really respect him for that. That's what it takes. Just as a winning effort. So, like I've told you guys, he's one of the best players in the league. He's one of the most special guys I know. He's one of my best friends, and I really respect him. Not just because of his effort on that particular play, but that's who he is. That's who he is every day, and he's consistent in that way. So that's what I love him. That's what I love him for.
Slick and Hugh, I thought about you guys as
thanks.
Youth coaches, as I am. All three of us are youth coaches on that play, and that's the first thing I thought about after DK Metcalf ran down Budda Baker, who, by the way, ran a 4.45 40-yard dash at the Combine in 2017. And I don't think he's much slower now. Maybe a 5/100ths of a second slower now, as he's a little bigger now than he was then. But I thought about you guys, and I thought, man, every youth coach in America on the first day of practice of whatever sport you coach should get out your phone, put DK Metcalf chases down Buda Baker on your Google search, and show them that video just to remind them that that is the type of effort that every single kid in America should show on a play where you get, where your teammate lets you down, your teammate makes a bad play, or you make a bad play, and you can still make a tackle. You go make a tackle. That was pretty phenomenal, Hugh. One of the great athletic feats I've seen on a football field. That was unbelievable.
Well, it was, and particularly when you consider that he might have been frustrated because he hadn't been involved much. I think that I think Schottenheimer, they did a poor job of getting him involved. And when he did beat Patrick Peterson by 2 full yards on a go route, Russell underthrew him. So it had to have been a frustrating night on a personal level. A lot of times, guys, the divas, quote unquote, the wide receiver divas would be inclined to take that play off. And yeah, I mean, he was 3-4 yards behind him and just flat rat him down. And it really should have been, it was 13-7 at the time. Maybe we'll talk about the schematics of that play because at that juncture, you're thinking, even when he made that tackle, you're saying, wow, look at where you are in the red zone. You had 2 field goals and now this interception. So that started to be one of the storylines of the game. Had Seattle lost, you're thinking at that time, is the red zone inefficiency. And so, but I'll tell you what I thought. First thing, of course, the Metcalf play. I don't think I can add much. Everything you just said, Dick, is absolutely right. It's a remarkable testament to his character. It's one of the reasons why I switched my mind and did not want to bring Antonio Brown in here. I don't want to disrupt that type of mindset. But I'll tell you what I thought. I hate to bring it up, but they did in the broadcast. That's the same end zone that we had the most cataclysmic interception in the history of football, not Seattle football of all time. And the first thing, if a neurologist could measure my synapses and say, what did I think on that fateful play against the Patriots? The very first registered thought that I conjured was, it's second down. It's second down. And the very first thought that I had on this interception, no, I was like, why is he floating? That was the first thought, that why is he floating? Why is he choosing that trajectory? That was the first thing I thought. But when I saw Baker get that ball, the next thought I thought is this first down. You just had an 18-yard completion down to and it's first and goal at the 3. If you don't love it, first and goal on the 3, if it's not bright green, you just ditch it. And it's 2nd and 3. You got the momentum, and you're going to go up 20-7. So why would he? Why? It's just bad understanding by a great player, by a Hall of Famer. We don't need to say that anymore. But that was a bad play, and the fact that it was first down is a big part of my reason why it was such a bad play. And one other thought. It was a bunch formation, and they're trying to get man-to-man. They got the man-to-man, and you pick. But normally when you have a 3-by-1 formation, 80 to 90% of the time, you're going to have the back opposite the trip. So the defense actually sees it as a 3-by-2 because they're just counting. There's 5 eligible receivers. And guess what? Here's the thing. Even though you have 5 eligible receivers, the defense can only see it one of 2 ways. They can only see it as a 3-by-2 or a 4-by-1 because there can't be a 5-by-0 because the end man on the line of scrimmage on each side is eligible. So the defense sees it. So usually the defense will see as a 3-by-2, whether it's trips. If you go trips and you put the back to the trip side, then the defense sees it as a 4-by-1. And so what Seattle, they lined up in a 4-by-1. When you see other teams that have done this, for example, the Falcons scored against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. That's just one that's randomly coming to my mind. Usually it's the back on the other side. So the defense at the pre-snap, they see a 3-by-2. Does that make sense? Trips receivers to 1, the split end on the opposite side, plus the running back to the side of the split end. The defense sees it as 3-by-2. When you line up in a 4-by-1, as opposed to, and I'm talking about pre-snap, not post-snap. The defense is they're communicating in a 4-by-1 concept. So they've got Buddha come on over the top. You're trying to get the picks, but you're usually when you're picking for the running back, you're picking a linebacker who's at about on the 3-yard line is about 4 yards depth, maybe 3 yards depth. So you're getting picks on this shallow guy. The way the Cardinals communicated that, again, because it's a 4-by-1 and there's a threat of the back in the backfield pre-snap. Now they have Buddha Baker in man coverage, but he's not at 3 to 4 yards depth. He's at 7 to 8, possibly 9 yards depth in the end zone. So you don't get the picks you want. So he's able to fire his gun on the arrow route or the shoot route, whatever the terminology you choose, that flat route, and Russell floats it, obviously allowing Buddha to get into play. So these are the details that equate to success. If I showed you that play, because that's a pretty common play, the Saints run it all the time, a lot of teams, but you're getting the pick. You're getting those 3 guys bunched up are going to pick for the defender who's covering the back.
Why would Russell ever just float that ball in there?
Because he thinks he's got the pick and it's a wide open walk-in touchdown. He thinks it's a walk-in touchdown. He doesn't see that they didn't get the pick.
Okay.
He doesn't see that they.
That sounds familiar.
Well, yeah. I mean, just to carry it out, it's so unfair. Listen, we got a 5-1 football team. We're going to wake up tomorrow. The sun's going to be up, and we're going to say, "Hey, Seattle's still a great football team." At least, they're taking on water with their defense, but so it's really not fair. But I do think it's worth remembering that on that I'm going to just call it the fateful play. 2 minutes later on the mic'd up, Russ was asking what happened. He didn't know if Butler had gone over the top or underneath. He didn't know which way he had jumped the route. And I mean, that's proven by his own question on NFL mic'd up. And so it gets back to on that particular play, which was second down, you still have 2 more downs to win the football game. Tonight, 1st and goal and 3, you just had an 18-yard completion. If it's not bright green, just break a camera lens. Yep. They got those big $10,000 lenses in the back of the end zone.
Roll it right through them.
Drill a freaking camera lens and let his insurance pay for it, right?
All right.
Right?
We got to get to this defense, Hugh. Coming into the game, and I think I even talked to you about it when you were joining us on Friday. I said, hey, the way I'd play this is don't put too many guys in Kyler Murray's face. Don't rush 5, don't rush 6, because he's going to burn you 25 yards downfield with his legs every single time. And he did on 3rd and long a couple times in the first quarter. And then guess what? No more blitzes, man. It was all 4-man rush, a couple of 3-man rushes, which is exactly what I thought they should have done. And yet a ton of people are killing them for a lack of pass rush. So my question to you, was it a terrible lack of pass rush, or was it by design a containment pass rush to just move up the field, keep him in a box, and make him a passer?
Well, I think you should always do that with him. But if you're going to do that, you got to be sound. For example, 6:44 to go. Seattle just assumed a 10-point lead. You're in control. The second play of the Falcon drive, the Seahawks are in a zone. They're in a 4-deep, 3-under zone. They've got Jordan Brooks out there to Kyler Murray's left, and Murray on 2nd and 7 gets out of the pocket for an 18-yard gain. And if you look at the play, Benson Mayowa is on Kyler Murray's left, and they don't run a stunt, but meaning a twist. But Benson Mayowa decides he wants to go in the B gap and lose contain. Well, a guy like Kyler Murray is going to break outside to the left, and because Seattle's in a defense that only has 3 underneath defenders in their zone, he's able to make a move on Jordan Brooks and get up the sideline. So that's unsound. Now, is it possible that no, I'm trying to say, I'm trying to absolve Benson Mayowa, and I just can't. There is scant explanation other than Maioa forgot who the quarterback was that he was rushing. And so it's breakdowns like that. But in the grand scheme of things, they have to be better on pass rush. When you beat the Arizona Cardinals, you can do both. You can provide more pressure and still have sound contain, not do things like what Benson Maioa did. And I'm going to just tell you my opinion right now. I didn't like the Jamal trade at the time. And as I sit here right here on this date, I don't like the Jamal Adams trade because you just cannot convince me that if John Schneider would have picked up the phone and called 31 other teams and said, look, we stink at drafting number 1 picks, so we're done with it. So our package is 2 number 1s, a number 3, and Bradley McDougall, an above average to really good, strong safety in this league. All 4 of those players, what do you give me? I just can't believe you can't get better than Jamal Adams. Now, not better than Jamal Adams as a football player, because Jamal Adams is a hell of a football player. But he's a safety. He's a safety. And to me, when I'm looking at Khalil Mack, the Bears gave up less for Khalil Mack than Seattle gave up for Jamal Adams on a night like this. And you got Taylor. He's out. Your second round pick. You've got LJ Collier. You spent a number 1 pick on LJ Collier, and Darrell Taylor's not. I mean, it's just all this capital.
It isn't helping you.
It's not helping you.
Yeah, it's not helping you. And
it's not helping you.
And guys, you lost Shaq Griffin, and I'm looking at a defense that had allowed 7 points at the 2-minute warning in the first half. They allowed 7 points. And Shaq goes out. Trey Flowers comes in. How much of a difference was that in the second half?
Well, in Latin, they have all these fancy terms for what's called causal factors. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. We'll say, well, what is that? It's Latin for after this, therefore because of this. It can be a fallacy. Just because it happened doesn't mean that was the cause. It might mean it's the cause, but you have to analyze it further than to just say, well, all of this bad stuff happened after this one incident. Therefore, right. The one incident caused all this bad stuff. That can be fallacious reasoning. I would say this. In addition to that, Seattle they got gassed. They couldn't get off the field. They were giving up long drives, and so it spirals against you defensively. You're the fatigue factor. Now the big guys, in the first quarter they weren't getting a good pass rush, and so they beget their own problems because they're not getting a good pass rush. Now they're on the field longer, so they're getting more tired, which means they're getting worse pass rush, which, and yes, you see it, it's a downward cycle.
The offense wasn't helping because the offense was terrible in the second half. Didn't help the defense at all.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And there's a synergy there that each one, then the offense gets out of rhythm. Their sweat drives. They can't get the rhythm. So I think Seattle got out coached tonight, which is rare on both sides of the ball. And I think that Seattle hurt themselves. They shot themselves in the foot on significant plays in this game. You can look and you say, what's my expectation for a player in the National Football League? Do we expect them to be perfect? No. But how egregious are the mistakes? Like doctors, it's one thing to say, I thought you had strep throat and you had the flu, but don't leave a sponge inside the stomach. Like there's some in every profession, there's some things that are worse than others. And Seattle had too many egregious Mela violations where you just say, no, this is the NFL. If you're just kind of good, you should be able to do this. And mentally, they made too many breakdowns.
I'm going to ask you guys when we come back for our final segment and to give our final thoughts. There's a lot of people calling for the head of Ken Norton Jr. right now. A lot of people calling for the head of Ken Norton. And I know they're 5-1, but they have got a statistically abysmal defense right now. And I've been fighting for this defense. I've been fighting strong for this defense for the last 6 weeks. And I don't think they're as bad as the statistics. But at the same time, Hugh just mentioned defensive breakdown after defensive breakdown after mental mistake after coaching error. So I've got to ask you that follow-up question. We will. I've also got a few amazing statistics and streaks that were broken with this loss tonight. We'll do this on Facebook and social media. Slickhawks got you for the next 6 minutes. On radio, we'll be right back. It's the 12th Man Postgame Show presented by Steel right here on 950 KJR.
KJR AM and KJR FM HD2. Seattle! Available everywhere with the iHeartRadio app. Now number 1 in podcasting. Sports Radio 950 KJR, an iHeartRadio station.
All right, back with you for the second of 2 6 with Slickses. Now, why do we do that? Why did we time it out this way on purpose? Absolutely, because 6 plus 6 equals 12 minutes with me, with no interruptions from Hugh or Dick Fain. It's just you and me, and I call this the interactive portion of the 6 with Slicks, because this is where I want to hear from you and Sean Garrett back at the studio. He can pop up these comments and questions, and we're going to tackle what you want to talk about here for the next few minutes, talking about anything that has to do with this loss. If you want to rip somebody, if you want to ask a question, whatever you want to do, just get them in the comment section. We'll put them up. We'll knock out as many of these comments as we can. I'll try to give you some rapid response here with this loss, this overtime loss, now dropping down to 5-1. Obviously, right there, they're talking about what you do about Ken Norton Jr. It's interesting because normally my answer would be, well, it's the middle of the season. You're, week 7 going into week 8. What are you going to bring in that's better than this? I guess if you want to make Norton the scapegoat, Dan Quinn is out there. Dan Quinn's out there, who has been a coordinator for this defense before back in his heyday. So maybe you do make a change. Maybe you bring in Dan Quinn. Talked with Will Brinson of CBS Sports. Check that. Talked with Mike Garafolo of NFL Network a couple weeks ago and asked if there are any restrictions. He said he didn't believe so. So as far as with Dan Quinn getting fired from the Falcons, that should have let him completely out of his contract. He should be able to be picked up if the Seahawks wanted to actually bring him in to run this defense. All right. Baree, remember how bad the Raiders defense was with Ken Norton at a defensive coordinator, historically bad. It's interesting because I wanted to see what their offensive line would do now that Tom Cable went there. And then now we see Ken Norton coming here. I think a lot of it, again, though, a lot of more of it is personnel. As Josh points out, he says firing Norton wouldn't do any good. They have essentially no value in pass rush in their front four. I think a lot more of it has to do with personnel than scheme. And we've seen Pete Carroll's schemes work out before. Nick, Tyler Lockett tied the Hawks franchise record with 15 catches tonight. Not just that, but 200 yards. And I don't know, I've got to imagine that's close to a franchise record too. So that was cool. To see Tyler Lockett bust out. Ace says we're stuck in our ways and need to adjust. This is a different league than 5 years ago. Ace, I'm not sure what you're talking about there because I think you're looking at a team that has adjusted. I think that's what got them to 5-0 and got you close to a 6th win tonight is the fact that offensively they have adjusted. I mean, that whole let Russ cook thing, I've never been much of one for the phrase, but I think they're kind of doing that. They did let off the gas a little bit tonight, and it did hurt them. Matt Schneider, stop messing with AB and Gordon and get the D back. Gordon's here. I mean, you're just waiting for him to get activated by the league. I'm glad they didn't get AB. Absolutely, we need to get this defense back. I'm not sure where it starts, though, because, I mean, they're just you hear Hugh talk about it, and we've talked about it every week. There are fundamental problems with this defense, with the personnel, and I don't know where to start trying to fix it. Olsen and draft picks for defensive line coming tomorrow. Sure. Hey, look at something Chuck brought up back in, July. Carlos Dunlap. You got the Bengals. Now, maybe they're still trying to fight and get into the playoffs. I don't know. I doubt it. Took another tough loss today. Carlos Dunlap, I think, is somebody who could be made available. They're not really using him. He's been benched. So trade for Carlos Dunlap. Bring him in here. I think he can help. Travis, you're kidding, right? Every defense he's led has always gotten progressively worse. I'm saying I don't know that he's necessarily leading the defense. I think he was brought in because these players were expected to respond to him because he's liked and respected in the locker room by the veteran players that were there. I'm not saying don't move on from him. If they think that's the best course of action, sure. I'm just not sure it is. Dan Quinn was successful when he was here. Let's bring him in. Let's see what happens. Let's change it up. Nick says we need defensive players before coaches. Who do you think we should chase for in a trade? Like I mentioned there, Carlos Dunlap I think would be good. Last week I would have told you Yannick Ngakoue, and he ends up going to Baltimore. So there's that. Obviously, they're not going to get rid of Matt Judon either at this point. It's going to be tough. I mean, you're mid-season. You got to look at the teams that are out of it and see if they might be willing to part with somebody. Merv says, could DK be a pass rusher that converted to a tight end? Why not DK? I think DK's got his hands a little busy, although I was thinking tonight about when they're in a situation where they're down late or whatever. I mean, we've seen this with other fast wide receivers. Maybe use him on I don't know if he's any good at it or not, but use him as an emergency punt returner if you need a punt return late in the game or something like that in a big moment. So if DK is playing double duty, I would think it's probably for something like that. I wouldn't really expect it to be him rushing the passer, but they do need pass rushers. All right, last segment here of the 12th Man Postgame Show presented by Steel, Dick Fain, Hugh Mill, and myself. We're right back live.
Now back to the 12th Man Postgame Show, powered by Real Steel. Find yours. Visit your local Steel dealer today on your home for the 12th Man and the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
You know, Boomer does the fastest 2 minutes in sports. I think Slick, for those of you watching on Facebook and Twitch and all of our social media channels, Slick does the fastest 6 minutes in postgame. Well, when we're on break on radio, you gotta flip over and watch our Facebook stream because Slick just goes. That man just goes for 6 minutes.
With Slick.
And Facebook comments, and it is fantastic. Good stuff by Slickhawk there. We got a few stats here that are just absolutely amazing from this game. Some good, some bad. 1,091 combined yards, folks. Most in a regular season game in the NFL in 7 years. The 2013 Raiders-Eagles game, which I'm sure producer Kevin Shockey probably remembers that game. That had 1,102 yards in that football game.
I'm guessing on one side or the other, Nnamdi Asomugha was involved.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably was. The Hawks
also Kerry Williams.
In the last 18 games, the Hawks are 0-2 against Arizona and 13-3 against the rest of the NFL. There's a bizarre number. This is the first loss of the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll era when they led by 4 points or more at halftime. They were 59-0. That's the
over.
That's the famous Aaron Levine tweet that he throws out there every halftime. 59-0 going into tonight. They are now 59-1 when they lead by 4 or more. This also snaps a 41-game streak. Yes, 41. A 41-game streak when they lead by 10 or more at halftime. And in one-score games now, they were 14-2, now 14-3 since the beginning of last year. Some bizarre numbers from this one. Dick Fain, Brady Love Millen, Slickhawk with you. It is the 12th Man Postgame Show, our first losing post-game show of the 2020 season after the overtime loss 37-34 to the Arizona Cardinals. And as we teased, folks, Ken Norton Jr. is taking some big heat on text, on Facebook chat, on Twitter, everywhere you look. Ken Norton is taking some serious heat. Slick, I heard you talk for a few minutes about it with the Facebook folks on our radio break, and maybe just reiterate if 30, 45 seconds of your take on Ken Norton's status right now and what it should be.
Well, I just don't know how much that gets you. I think it's a defense primarily run by Pete Carroll. It's his system. I think it's more of a personnel issue than it is a coaching issue. But there's a unique situation right now because normally I'd be like, it's the middle of the season. Like, who are you going to bring in that's going to do better? But there does happen to be a former NFL head coach and a former defensive coordinator from here, Dan Quinn, who is available on the market. And when I talked to Mike Garafolo a couple weeks ago from NFL Network, he said there's no contract restrictions, anything like that would prevent him from going and working for another team this year, whether as a consultant, coach, whatever. So if they wanted to can Ken Norton and bring in Dan Quinn, they could do it.
Hugh, what do you think? It's obviously it may be unprecedented in NFL history that a 5-1 team would fire either coordinator, but and I'm sure it's a long shot to actually happen. But since it is being talked so much out there right now in the Twitterverse, I want to get your take.
Well, there's two issues in my mind. Number one would be what's the likelihood that you're going to have a significant schematic adjustment or technique adjustment that just how's the defense going to play? Is he likely to improve that? The second question is there some favorable or unfavorable psychology that comes along with a decision like that. So my hunch with regards to the first would be, because Pete Carroll's a defensive guy, that there'd be relatively little. If let's say it was, some offensive guy, let's say Cliff Kingsbury, and he's not really a guy that's got his eyeballs on that defense, then you would think there could be a chance for more impact. Having said that, I think that it would be a good shakeup not to fire Ken Norton, because I think that I think there's some real affection that the players have for him, and I think that they would feel like he got wronged. But I think that to pay Dan Quinn a consulting fee to come in and sit alongside and just say, hey, he's here to give some advice. Sure. In 2016, the Huskies had their best offensive year by far. It was really Jake Browning's only really good year. Yeah. And he had Jeff Tedford, sitting up there, helping. So I think that it can be done, and I would consider doing it for sure. But I would not fire Ken Norton for the reasons I stated.
We talked about, in the prior segment, we talked about the strange plays that were executed or not executed, as the case may be, in overtime there when the Seahawks had the ball in Arizona territory and then threw 4 passes in a row. Let's flip it on its ear and go back to the regulation, Hugh, where the Seahawks have the ball. And let's go up to, basically, the start of the drive. The Seahawks are leading 34-28 at the 2-minute warning. And they run, I'm looking at 4 consecutive running plays, one on 2nd and 1 that gets them the first down, and then 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, running plays to Carlos Hyde that net them only 8 yards, and they punt the ball back to Arizona. What was your take on completely taking the football out of Russell Wilson's hands, leading by 3 inside 2 minutes to go in regulation?
Well, it's 2:28 to go when the drive started at their own 15, and they called a naked bootleg for Russell coming out to his right, and they had completed some nice passes to Hollister on that concept, and one to Tyler Lockett. Remember when he made that one-hand catch out in the flat? So there was an option to throw, and Russell kept it, and then remember his slide, and because he slid, they marked the beginning of where you start to give yourself up. So that led to a 2nd and 1. That was actually favorable for Seattle to not get the first down, right?
Yes, Collinsworth mentioned that on the broadcast. You're exactly right.
And then the 2-minute warning was the next play. So coming out of the 2-minute warning, at this juncture, you're really trying to force those timeouts. And so the first down, or I beg your pardon, it would have been the 2nd and 1. You run there to force them to A, pick up the first down, B, force them to use the timeout. So now you're 1st and 10 at the 26. You had a stretch play where Hyde tried to get north. There was a lot of junk in there, box of coat hangers, and you only get 1 yard. You could argue that they should have, if they were going to throw, it would have been then. But they forced a timeout, right? Mm-hmm. And then the 2nd and 9 play, they get a stretch. They get a nice stretch play out there for 7 yards. And that set up the 3rd and 2. And really the 3rd and 2 from the Cardinal perspective, it's a lot like last week with Minnesota, or 2 weeks ago with Minnesota, where now in this case for Seattle was the 4th down play. But Arizona had to have that stop on 3rd and 2. And Seattle chose to go stretch right there. I think you could argue that given that you're giving the ball to Arizona with 52 seconds, if you could add it, would it be worth it to throw the ball on 3rd and 2, risking 30 seconds? Like what was getting it from a minute and a half down to 52, a minute and 25 down to 52, was it worth? Obviously, in retrospect, you had no gain. So in hindsight, you'd say, no, let Russell throw. You just had the 7-yarder. They tried a similar scheme to stretch off to the right side, and And it's just, it's bad. That would have been the game-winning play, and he got stuffed for no gain. So I think that there is a little bit of room for questioning. If we're going to talk about it, Russell Wilson as an MVP, and if we're going to talk about paying him the most of any quarterback in the league, then these are the type of situations you say, do you want the ball in your quarterback's hand? For example, when Seattle chose to go for it on 4th and 2 down on the goal line. Right. And they hit Tyler Lockett on the reviewed touchdown pass. That's a situation where you say, look, our defense is not the strength of our team. We've got an opportunity. 3 is not going to be enough. And so they went for it on 4th and 2. So they were aggressive in that situation. 3rd and 2 to have just run it. Yeah, I'll entertain the idea that that's too conservative.
Slick, it's funny. I'm smiling here because I'm thinking of the debates that you and I have had for months and months and months and months on this let Russ cook thing. Well, this was a microcosm of everything that, let Russ cook in the first half, and it was freaking awesome, right?
Yeah.
They got conservative at the end of the game, and it was terrible. They let Russ cook at the end of the game. It was terrible. It's like they're like neither side gained any traction on this argument today because we saw the good and the bad of both sides of this argument.
Well, for the let Russ cook thing, and again, I've never been one for that phrase necessarily. It's just an overall philosophy of, hey, your best player is your quarterback, use him more.
Right.
But I don't know that there's really an argument to be made. The fact that the amount of points you're able to put up week in and week out, put up leads that you would think a defense should be able to hold on to, and the kind of plays that he's been able to create in this offense, that they've put their foot down a little bit, farther on the gas, and they've ramped up the RPMs. And it's not just the play calling either, because look, we could dissect play calling all day. And just because, and I'll use it, I guess, just because you're letting Russ cook doesn't mean you're not going to run 3 or 4 times in a row if that's what's working, or adjust to what's happening in the game. I think it just means, the graphic that they threw up about the swing, the vast swing, and what you're doing on 1st and 2nd down, percentage of the time throwing the ball versus what you did last year, things like that. It's like if it's a meter and it was left of center before, and that over there is leaning on the run, and on the right side of center is leaning on the pass, I wanted to flip from like 45% to 60, 45 to 60 or whatever. So that's kind of what I want, and I think we've seen that, maybe even a little bit past that. But I just don't see it as, just because they ran later or got a little bit more conservative or were trying to play with the clock. I don't see that as not let Russ cook. I just they were playing football.
I think that's fair, Hugh. The one thing that this style has led to, however, is higher scoring on both sides, more drives, stressing out the defense. There were 25 drives in this football game. 25. We've had Seahawks games in the past where it was Carson left, Carson Russ, Carson right, play action. We've had games where each team had like 7 or 8 drives.
Well, it was overtime, and there's a few of those. I get it, and you had that sequence there where you had back-to-back interceptions. Russ throws the interception, and then Murray throws the interception. So, guys, I just look at it, and I think that where Seattle's it's just a fundamental flaw that they have to work around. It's like you drop the porcelain egg off of the freaking mantle. You can glue it back together and try and stick it up there, but it's just never going to be the same. And Seattle is flawed in the following area. They don't have a pass rush, and right now they don't have good corner play. And the combination of those two is really a death knell for your defense, because your corners aren't covering well. You feel compelled to go cover 2, which is to play the corners in the flat and drop both safeties off. So now you're not as good as in run support as you have been under a Pete Carroll ideal situation. And the way Seattle plays cover 2, there's a term you've all heard called Tampa 2. And all that means is, in cover 2, for those who don't know, there's 5 underneath guys in the zone near the line of scrimmage. If you hold your 5 fingers out, your thumb and your pinky are the corners. And then the 3 inside guys, you got Bobby Wagner as your middle finger, and then you've got, whether you're depending on your personnel, but you could have Ugo Amadi, or you could have, you said KG Wright, or you could have You saw Jordan Brooks in there as one of the right. But then behind that's the shallow layer close to the line of scrimmage. Then behind that is two safeties. The only thing that's different, two safeties behind it, right, on either half of the field. And one of the strengths of that in defending and pass is you can redirect all the eligible receivers. You don't allow them free access. You make them have to dodge you at the line of scrimmage and get converted. Seattle, when they play the cover two, they play it a lot like the Tampa two, where Bobby Wagner gets relatively deep as the middle guy. I'm going to again go middle finger. I'm not flipping anybody off. That's Bobby Wagner, okay? And so because he gets relatively deep, that puts a stress on those other what's called the hook zone defenders. So Bobby's, the curl defenders. Bobby's the hook zone defender, and then the two guys on each adjacent side to him are curl defenders. And so there were so many completions right in front of Kyler Murray where he's just dinging. There's just wide open spaces because Seattle's playing this Tampa version. And one of the things, they don't have a four-man rush. They can't play with the four-man rush because they don't have the dudes. So they're trying to play a coverage. Zone coverages are played with seven guys customarily. Mm-hmm. All right. And, you've heard the term 7-on-7 leagues, right? You play defense with seven guys in pass coverage. If you play, sometimes it's 8 and sometimes it's 6, but it's generally 7. If you're going to play with that cover 2 look, and you have no pass rush, you're going to get picked apart all day. So bad corner play, no pass rush. You spend all that, LJ Carlier, you spend a number 1 on a defensive end, he isn't giving anything. Malik McDowell, you spend a number 2 on a guy that it was supposed to be a somewhat of a hybrid. I'm talking about Tampa 2. What was who's the dude from Miami, the 3 tech for the Buccaneers? Come on, Warren Sapp. So you thought he was going to be a Warren Sapp type guy, like an athletic 3 technical, legitimate pass rusher from the 3 tech. So you don't have Malik McDowell. You don't have Taylor, who traded up and used a 2nd-round pick to get this year. You don't have I think I mentioned LJ Collier, and you spent all all of your resources, 2 number 1s and blah 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 to get a strong safety. So it's the lack of juice as your pass rusher. I just threw on the coach's tape from the Super Bowl against the Broncos. I did that early in midweek just to I just wanted to refresh my memory about the fronts that we're playing now versus what we're playing. And you had Chris Clemens and you had Cliff Averill starting. You had Michael Bennett as a 3 technique on the outside shade of the guard. And then you had Brandon Mebane, as the one, you had a 4-man rush, 3 of whom by both their personnel and their alignment were definitely capable of getting up the field and pressuring the quarterback. So you could play a 4-man rush. Now, they chose to play 3 deep, 4 under behind it, as opposed to 2 deep, 5 under. Right. But they could get the pass rush with 4 guys. Seattle can't get the pass rush with 4. They don't have the corners to play the cover 3. So they're not as good in run support. It's just, you take everybody's going to call for Ken Norton, and you say, well, Dan Quinn's going to come in. Dan Quinn's going to go, who's my pass rushers and how are my corners? And right now, when you're talking about Seattle being a potential Super Bowl team, that aspect of the football team, it's bubble gum, it's baling wire, and it's duct tape to try and to try and win football games when you don't have a pass rush and you don't have corners.
Let's go to James in Shoreline. He's been waiting patiently. James, you're on the 12-man postgame show. Hi, James.
How's it going, guys? Just a couple thoughts on this. I think all the analysis seems pretty spot on, but I can't help but think if Carson was in that game, I think we win the game just because the offense really got stuck in the mud there, and there were some short yardage situations that they weren't able to handle. And just, Carson's the only runner on that team that can just charge through and get extra yards. And so I think that people are kind of freaking out, but I think you're forgetting one of the best offensive players was out. And then I guess I was wondering, so, I don't know how serious the situation is if Carson's coming back soon,
But that plus obviously missing Adams. I mean, he's been gone for a few games now, so it's hard to even know exactly how much he's going to improve the defense when he comes back. And I don't know, it's kind of surprising that he wasn't there. So I don't know. I guess I get your guys' thoughts on that. Like, do you think, I mean, Carson and Adams both missing in action during those, last crucial sequences in the fourth quarter and overtime, would have made the difference? Or is there something more fundamentally rotten with the team that you think is a bigger picture problem?
Appreciate it. Thank you, James. Appreciate the call. And I think that I'm a huge Chris Carson fan. Anybody knows me knows that I'm a monster Chris Carson fan. But I thought Carlos Hyde played a pretty good football game today. I mean, I really do. I mean, you look at the numbers: 15 carries, 68 yards, a touchdown, 4.5 yards a carry. He was pushing guys. He was pushing the pile. Injuries are part of the game. I mean, we were watching Arizona get guys scraped up off the grass all night long. So I don't know if you can use the Chris Carson injury as an excuse on this one, guys.
Well, Kenyon Drake got hurt as well. And my answer would be, the football game balanced on the blade of a knife for a long time. It was, a scant, just a little teeter either way, and Seattle wins the game. So if you say that no Chris Carson wouldn't have made a difference, then you're saying don't pay Chris Carson at the end of the year. Right? Chris Carson's their number one back. Carlos Hyde's their number two, right? So there's no doubt in my mind that that they would have been a better football team, and probably won. But Dick's right. Injuries are part of the game. They had injuries, and as for Jamal Adams, let's see how they play when he comes back. I mean, he's a tremendous safety, but he's only a safety, and he's just going to be a cover two cover two safety. Well, if you can't get a pass rush and you're still playing a Tampa style of cover two, they're still going to get those completions, right? You're not helping the corners, not helping. Right. And then you say, well, if you're going to blitz, then you got to better be able to play man to man, or play zone with just six guys, which they had struggled, and they were giving up record numbers when Jamal Adams was on the field. That is indisputable. Record numbers. They were 80 yards worse than the second worst team in the league.
Oh yeah, no, the yardage numbers are an abomination. There's no question about that. The points allowed are not good, but they're in. I mean, they were like, 16th, 17th in the NFL coming into this game in points allowed. So they were at least middle of the pack in points allowed. And that's the name of the game, is how many points you allow, not how many yards you allow. But guys, final thoughts here on where this leaves you. I mean, boy, the NFC West looks entirely different right now than it did just a few hours ago before the 49ers got a win, before the Cardinals beat you. I mean, you had a 10-point lead late in the fourth quarter, and you should be 6-0 right now and leading the division by 2 full games with a tiebreaker, the first part of the tiebreaker of the Arizona Cardinals. And instead, you are now 5-1. The Cardinals are 5-2 with, at the very least, a tie in the tiebreaker scenario. The Rams just a game behind you. And the Niners now, look out for the Niners. They're only a game and a half behind you, and you got them next week. So, Slick, let's start with you. Where do you see this team overall health-wise right now in this division?
Well, obviously it's going to be a dogfight. And, I took a golf lesson about 3-4 months ago. I went to Tony over at Meadow Park, and I told Tony, I said, hey, look, man, I'm a big guy. A lot of fundamentals and things like that, I'm just not going to be able to pull off. But what I need you to do is just take a look at me, what I can do, teach me a couple workarounds, some things that I can just kind of patch it through with some practice, and I can just get it down there and make it work and work on my short game and stuff. He said, okay, and we worked on some things. Defensively, that's what you got to do. You got to figure out what you can do to just be all right and let the offense do the rest. That's how this team's going to win football games. And so it's worked up until now. They weren't able to finish it off tonight. Go back at it next week against the Niners, because that's another huge game and a game that they can win. But you got to figure out how to be able to patch this thing together, get your workarounds, and be all right.
You, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's good. And I'm an analogy guy, so I think that's a good analogy. So I'm down with that. But and furthermore, Jamal Adams, and we're talking about having to play cover 2 because your corners aren't playing well. The worst aspect, go back and study the jet tape. Like I watched every game, and the worst aspect of Jamal Adams' game, and he's a great safety, but he's not as good playing a half safety cover 2 as he is a box safety and trying to create mayhem down in the front. Well, to be able to play the front that suits Jamal Adams the best, your corners have to be one-on-one. You have to trust them. So you're in a little bit of a bind there. If you're going to play cover 2, you better be without a pass rush. You'd be better be next to perfect from a assignment standpoint. They weren't. They had a couple busts, and even in the cover 2 today. Meanwhile, I think that Seattle got pantsed offensively. They their protection scheme got flat out exposed. They had the week bye. The Cardinals were coming off of a short week with Monday night. This should have favored a veteran quarterback and the Seahawks with a week off to not be in a position where they were so feeble in their pass protection. So I think that just shut Seattle down. Didn't matter what your weapons are outside. If their blitz package is going to render you that ineffective. And so that to me was kind of the game. In addition to the things we talked about earlier, just not playing clutch from the 6.5 minute mark on in to close out the game and during overtime. But you're still a 5-2 football team, and you didn't expect you were going to go 15-1.
Right.
It just makes it tougher. This was a winnable game, but you know what? There's been a few on the win column that were losable games.
Yes.
That Seattle could well have lost, and so Seattle really shouldn't be any better than 5-2 when you consider how they played across the board.
Totally agree.
If they were 6-1 right now, you go, whoa, this is almost smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, and I do think this team is the best team in the division. I mean, I've watched a lot of this division, and I see holes everywhere. Despite the record, despite the 18-8 that this division is right now, there's a lot of holes in this division, and I like the situation that we're in going into next week because now you got a 49er team that's kind of feeling themselves a little bit. They're like, okay, we're kind of back, back on the right side of 500 right now. And then the Seahawks are the team coming off the loss. I kind of like that dynamic going into next week against the 49ers versus, the Seahawks being off another just miracle win. Obviously, you'd rather have the win, but I am a firm believer that a loss, particularly a tough loss that you shouldn't have had, where you led the game for 60 minutes, right? You led the game until there was 0 seconds on the clock, basically, in regulation. Arizona never led this football game until they kicked the game-winning field goal. So I do feel like that bodes well for the Seahawks going into that 49er game coming up next week. Well, gentlemen, great stuff as always. Slick, what do you got on the big morning show? I know you got Hugh Breedlove Millen at 7 a.m. for the Monday Morning Quarterback.
Absolutely. Checking myself until 7 o'clock. Greg Bell, I think he'll still be down there in Glendale, maybe at the airport at 7 o'clock to give his thoughts from being down there. And then Hugh's going to pop on with us at 7:20 all the way up until 10. Mike Holmgren joins the morning show at 9 o'clock for that whole 9 o'clock hour with Hugh and Chuck as well.
We'll have a double dip of Hugh, not only 7 o'clock tomorrow until the end of the morning show. He'll be on with Softy and myself at 4:20 tomorrow because usually we play the opponent audio recap. For the first time this year, we're not going to play the opponent audio recap because we don't want to hear the opponents.
No Ron Wolfley? Oh, come on.
We don't want to hear the opponents call for a Arizona win over the Seahawks, but that's exactly what happened. So, Hugh, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Slick Hawk, Dick Fain saying so long. Thanks to Sean doing a great job on all of our social media and getting this stream up as well. Kevin Shockey back in the studios at 950 KJR. We will talk to you tomorrow morning. It's been a presentation of Sports Radio 950 KJR.